My name is Lee Hoagland. We are at the Oddfellows Hall in Moderation Center in Hollis, Maine. I was kind of one of those kids in 2008 who was kind of like floundering. You know, I graduated and had no jobs and no skills and like living with my parents. Carpentry was always a job I wanted kind of to do, but I didn't want to build subdivisions. Growing up in Plymouth, I saw so many old houses gutted, torn down and suburbanized. And then once I got into it, it was just like a match hitting Tinder. The timing all worked out too, in terms of I was able to go to school during that time, and then I was able to like take my time and work under people. And then when I was getting ready to go out on my own is when the economy started to pick up and all the old guys started retiring and there was kind of a space. This has basically been a dream for me since I first moved to Buxton in 2013. I was been driving around and all of a sudden I went by this giant yellow building and I was like, oh, what's the deal with that? And I kept thinking for the next 10, 12 years, what's the deal with that? Because it was so obviously this great building, and you look at the architecture and the cornice and all these details, and I could just tell from working on old buildings what a special building it was and how intentional it was built and how it really meant something to people. And so I'm obviously drawn to that. And then this is also while working in my 14 by 30 garage wood shop at my house, knowing I needed a bigger space, knowing if I was ever going to expand my business, I needed a new space. This was here, and it was empty, and no one was using it, and no one had a plan for it. All right, so now you're into the Masonic Hall, right? This was all like that thick red carpeting. So this is where they'd have the ceremonies. You can still see the chairs here. Oddfellows are all about 3. I had an old employee, his name was Wes, who was in Portland, at Portland Architectural Salvage, and met Alice and called me and said, hey, this lady from Portland Architectural Salvage is selling everything. There's like hardware and all this stuff you can get. And I had found out through the years that she'd owned this hall. So after finding out that she was liquidating her business, I realized that this was the time. So my wife and I got a sitter for our kids and went over here and popped through the window, and it was so much better than I ever thought. I expected much, much worse. I expected it to be dirtier, I expected roof leaks, I expected, all this, but it's like the Oddfellows just walked out one day, and that's it. I had to make a move, or really what Alice was trying to figure out was the right person to sell it to. She wanted someone who was from the area, and I think she had a lot of guilt about not doing anything for the last 20 years or so. So wanted to kind of make sure that it went into the hands of someone who was going to do something, but also had a vision for it to be itself. I just knew it would work. Having a nice wood floor to work on, and then I knew I could also just not disturb what's here, because it's super special.
In 1875, Thomas Bradbury and Elbridge Sawyer got together, and it only took 2 people. They had the idea they wanted to be Oddfellows. They saw something that was missing from the community. The Masons were across the river on the Buxton side, but they thought there was opportunity for another service organization here in town. They quickly got another 8 people so they could make an application to join the Oddfellows organization. By the time they started organizing in 1875, they had another 26 people. First thing you know, they're meeting in the Masonic building. They kick things off with a parade, a band. They're out in the streets, and they have a supper for 500 people. That's a big number for a small village like this. And they buy this lot in 1894, and then they move in here in January 1895. They used the building to raise money. They had a lot of dinners here, and I think probably that's where the Rebeccas helped out a lot. They were the female version of the Oddfellows. This is one of the heart rooms of the organization here, the Oddfellows and Rebeccas. This is the kitchen where many dinners were put on. But this would have been the main door out into the big dining room, auditorium area. I don't know, can you see up here? Can you see up there these openings? Those hatches are for movies, because this was a multi-use community center. So this is the entrance to the downstairs at the Oddfellows building, and we're at the ticket booth. There's a small room in behind here and a little opening for people as they come in to pay for admission or get a ticket. This is designed purposely for theater operations. Probably could still work well today. I'm sitting on the stage. This would have been the biggest theater stage in the area, bigger than Bar Mills or Bonnie Eagle. And what I really liked is the graffiti on the walls. There's a lot of graffiti we think is going to get preserved here in the restoration. And that graffiti includes some plays by Buxton and Hollis high schools. The high schools would work together cooperatively, and one high school would put on a play, and the other high school would organize the dinner, and then they'd split the proceeds. This was the community center for the area. Hollis High School graduations, political events. My first political experience was meeting a candidate for governor here in 1960. The decline of this building and the decline of the village happened together. Radio played a part. Radio comes into the area in 1925, and of course television was more the same around 1950 or so. This was a local entertainment center, and radio and TV contributed greatly to its decline. And we're left with a quiet residential community, which is potentially being revitalized now. It's just sat here for a long time, sort of asleep. And now we've got a new house going in across the street, and we have this Oddfellows buildings being refurbished. It's a little uptick and a good spot for the village of West Buxton.
For me, doing restoration carpentry, I feel like an oddfellow in my own way, right? Is that I'm the weird one. I'm the one that wants to, work on timber frames and do stuff in a more kind of historic way. Like, yes, there's going to be some foundation repair in the rear, and there's, the outhouses need to be addressed, and that back chimney need to be addressed. This is the ladies' room here.
Oh, wow. I mean, this place is much more rustic than I thought it was going to be. That's a two-holer.
A two-holer, yeah.
Yikes.
So it just goes on and on. This is the boys' side here. We got a triple holer here. Well, the real challenge is the mixed zoning, basically, is that along the Saco River, the Saco River Corridor Commission has jurisdiction over the 500 feet from the river. And then Hollis has their own zoning. So in order to have this business, I'm going to need to either get a variance or redistrict. What I want to do is as low maintenance as possible. I'm not trying to change it. I just want to be in here cutting wood. It's really all I have. It's all I'm looking for. We live in Groveville. My house was said to be a tear down when I bought it in 2013. I bought it was less than the price of the land because they had to factor in the demolition cost for it. But it's a 1840s cape that I restored, and now I'm raising 3 kids in it. So yeah, we're not going anywhere. This is where, my kids go to school here. This is gonna be kind of a legacy place that I can teach my kids to cut wood in. I see it as kind of this grounding rod for our culture. People like to be around beautiful things. In buildings, if done properly, architecturally, they make you feel good when you look at them. So often with these buildings, it's the renovation that's the problem more than the actual original build. There's been a few spots, but the layout is pretty much the same of what it was.
Would you say this building has good bones?
Yes, I would. I mean, when I first looked at this 10 years ago, when I was just trying to not like, was sneaking in, I looked under the first floor, this old 2x10, 16 on center, which again is very well framed for this era. You know, this Victorian era can get very kind of light and sloppy in this, but this was like very seriously built building. There was a lot going on in other parts of history, and people were very skilled, they were very purpose-driven. They built these buildings that are still in great shape now, and they really cared about each other. And it's hard to work on historic buildings and not see that. The more successful of a business I can have, the more I can help people with historic homes in the area. So to really have a business that's like set on preserving the history of this area in greater southern Maine is my plan, it's my vision.
How do you, as a working man, find time to work on this building and do your other work that keeps a roof over your head in Buxton?
I don't know.
You're young.
We'll find out.
Yeah.
We'll find out.